Welcome back to Sleepy Saga Histories, where quiet stories from long ago are told by firelight to help you drift away. Tonight, you'll journey through a forgotten moment in time, a soft thread in the fabric of ancient life, slow and unhurried. Let the day fall away, your breath slow, and if this story keeps you company, you're always welcome back to the fire. The day begins early in Rome, not with passion nor with poetry, but with paperwork. In the atrium of a quiet domus, somewhere just off the bustling forum, two families meet beneath the flickering oil light of a household lamp. They are not strangers, and they are not alone. A notary waits with his stylus and wax tablets. Slaves hover at the edges of the room, careful not to disturb. On one side, a father adjusts the folds of his toga. On the other, another father does the same. Between them stands a girl, not quite a woman, her hair bound simply, her eyes lowered. Marriage in Rome begins not with love, but with an agreement. In the Roman world, a marriage was more than two people, it was the fusion of two households. The negotiation of dowry, name, status, and future. If you were wealthy, noble, or even just a respectable plebeian, your marriage was a contractual alliance, and one often arranged long before the first garland was ever placed upon a bride's head. This is the sponsalia, the betrothal. It is not binding in the way marriage will be, but it is serious. The father of the bride, acting in his legal role as paterfamilias, gives his consent. The groom's family in turn promises protection, support, and a dowry match. The two shake hands, and a token gift may be exchanged, a ring, placed not on the fourth finger out of sentiment, but because Romans believed a vein led directly from it to the heart. The girl, likely in her early teens, says little. Legally, her voice is not required, only the consent of her father. If she's fortunate, her future husband is young and kind, and not a man of 50 seeking a political match. But for now, the ceremony ends in silence. The betrothal is made. The wedding will follow soon, but not too soon. Auspicious days must be chosen carefully. The Romans did not marry in May. That month was reserved for honouring the dead. Nor were weddings held during festivals or religious fasts. The gods, jealous of their rituals, might frown on distractions. Instead, they turned to June, the month of Juno, goddess of marriage and women. And so in time, a day arrives. At dawn, the bride awakens in her father's home for the final time. Her tunic is simple, tied with a single knot, the nodus herculaneus, symbolic and protective. Her veil is flammeum, a bright saffron yellow, meant to invoke fire, light, and transformation. Her shoes match in colour. On her brow rests a wreath of flowers, gathered from the family's own garden. She does not dress alone. Her mother, sisters, and a pronuba, a matron who has been married only once and lives still with her husband, prepare her carefully. Her hair is parted into 6 braids, with a spearhead, an ancient symbol meant to ward off evil and ties her to Rome's founding myths. Meanwhile, in the atrium, the household bustles, garlands are hung. A pig is slaughtered and offered to the household gods. The lares and penates, guests gather, slaves serve honeyed wine and sweet bread. Laughter rises, but beneath it runs ceremony, tradition, and weight. When the time comes, the bride is led to the groom's house, not by carriage or horse, but on foot in procession. She is escorted by torches, flanked by singing guests, and sometimes small boys holding nuts to scatter, symbols of fertility and childhood left behind. At the front of the line walks the pronuba. At the rear, perhaps musicians or comic performers. The crowd chants the traditional wedding cry, Talasio, Talasio, a phrase whose origin is old, maybe older than the Republic itself. Some say it honours a Roman hero, others claim it was once a coded cry during the Sabine women's abduction. But by now, its meaning is mostly ritual, an echo of marriages past called into the present. When the bride arrives, she is carried across the threshold of her new home, not in romance but in tradition. To stumble would be bad luck. She touches fire and water, then turns to face her husband. Together, they offer another sacrifice to the household gods. His now, not hers. They clasp right hands, dextrarum junctio, the ancient symbol of union. A simple phrase may be spoken. Ubi tu Gaius, ego Gaia. Where you are Gaius, I am Gaia. Not always said, not always heard, but a quiet nod to the equality the ritual imagines. The day ends not in a feast for two, but in a banquet for many. Guests eat, recline, and drink. The bride may sit silently or be toasted. The groom may speak or withdraw. Eventually, the guests leave. The torches burn low, and the couple retires. What happens then belongs to them, and to history, and to silence. In the world of Rome, marriage was not always romantic, but it was deeply structured, wrapped in layers of symbolism, ritual, and law. And while much has changed, those quiet ceremonies echo still. Soft footsteps on ancient stone, drifting across time. The wedding fades, the music is gone, the torches have burned out, and the couple wakes in silence. Marriage in Rome was not just a ritual, it was a transformation. The bride, once her father's daughter, becomes her husband's wife. And with that shift comes a new rhythm, a new home, and a new role in the private world of Roman domestic life. But not all marriages were alike. There were different types of union in Roman law. The oldest and most traditional was called manus, literally hand. In this kind of marriage, the wife passed fully under the power of her husband, or more precisely, under the power of her husband's paterfamilias, if he still lived. She lost legal ties to her own family and could not own property. She became, in the eyes of the law, a daughter to the new house, no longer connected to the one she had left. But by the late Republic and early Empire, this model was already fading. A more flexible structure, called sine manu, without hand, became common among the elite. In this arrangement, the wife remained legally tied to her birth family and retained independent rights, at least in theory. She could own wealth, manage estates, even leave her husband under certain conditions. Still, within the home, expectations were clear. The Roman wife was expected to be modest, silent, and strong. She managed the household, supervised the slaves, prepared food, oversaw the weaving, cared for children, and upheld family rituals. She lit the lamps, offered prayers to the household gods, and kept the fire of Vesta burning at the hearth. She might attend gatherings or festivals, but rarely on her own. Her domain was interior, carefully bound, quietly powerful. The husband, meanwhile, was the public face of the union. He had the right to speak, to vote, to own, and manage property. He could conduct business, serve in office, or march to war. He might be gone for days, weeks, or months, while his wife maintained order at home. But Roman marriage, unlike some ancient models, was not devoid of affection. There are letters from soldiers, written with tenderness to wives back in Rome. There are tombstones that speak of shared laughter, kind hearts, and gentle companionship. Roman poets, Catullus, Ovid, and even Martial, write of love within marriage, sometimes lust, sometimes loyalty. It was not only a legal bond, it could also be a personal one. Still, the structure of marriage reflected hierarchy and honour. A woman's conduct reflected directly on her husband's reputation. Fidelity was demanded of her, while for him it was optional. He might keep a concubine, visit a brothel, or pursue affairs with lower status women or enslaved individuals. Roman morality accepted this. What mattered was public appearance and social standing. And yet not all wives were passive or quiet. Livia Drusilla, wife of Augustus, was a commanding figure, managing estates, guiding policy, and becoming a symbol of Roman womanhood. Cornelia, mother of the Gracchi, was praised not for silence, but for intellect. Aristocratic women could wield great influence, not always openly, but always present. Marriage in Rome was both private and public. It was a partnership, often unequal, but not always unfeeling. Its success depended not just on law, but on the personalities within it, on the ability to live together, to raise children, to endure absence, to withstand change. Because Rome, like marriage, was always in motion. In Rome, nothing sacred was ever simple, and nothing simple was ever without ritual. To the Roman mind, marriage was not merely a social contract. It was a spiritual act, one shadowed by omens, watched by gods and thick with tradition. Every word, every gesture, every date carried weight. To marry was to step through a door shaped by centuries of customs, and to pray the gods allowed you to pass. The Romans were deeply superstitious. They believed in signs from the heavens, in sacred birds, in the shifting winds and patterns of stars. And they believed that certain gods watched over marriage, from the courtship to the ceremony, to the long years that followed. Juno stood first among them. As the queen of the gods, she ruled not only over marriage, but over childbirth, family, and fidelity. It was to her that women prayed before the wedding, asking for a fruitful union and a healthy household. Many chose to marry in June, her sacred month, hoping her favour would rest on the home to come. There was also Venus, goddess of beauty and desire, called upon for attraction and fertility. Yet her gifts were seen as more dangerous, more passionate, more unpredictable. She could bless a marriage with joy or dissolve it with longing. Even Hercules made an appearance. His knot, the nodus herculeneus, was tied around the bride's tunic, a symbol of strength and protection. It was meant to be untied only by the husband, and it carried a whisper of power, of fate made flesh. The night before the wedding, many Roman girls would offer their childhood toys and trinkets to the household gods, Lares and Penates, as a farewell to youth. These domestic spirits watched over family and food and fire. Their favour was needed in the new home, but the rituals did not end there. The bride's veil, flammium, was not white, but a deep, fiery orange-yellow, said to mirror the sacred flame of Vesta. It was meant to guard her from evil spirits, to disguise her identity, and to represent transformation. To wear it was to become something new. Nuts, small, hard and symbolic, were thrown at the wedding procession, a playful act with ancient meaning. They represented fertility and leaving childhood behind. Some say they were thrown to children, others to the crowd. Always they marked the threshold between girlhood and wifehood. Superstition seeped into every corner. A sneeze at the wrong time might delay a ceremony. A bad dream the night before could send anxious parents scurrying to an augur, reading the entrails of birds or animals for a glimpse of divine will. The threshold itself was a place of tension. The bride was not allowed to step over it. She was carried. Some said it was to avoid bad luck. Others claimed it mimicked the Sabine women, taken by force but later reconciled. Either way, it was a moment watched closely, a pause between one life and the next. Inside the new home, the bride touched fire and water, the two cleansing elements of Roman life. She was offered bread and salt. The groom might utter a short phrase, never official vows, but a promise nonetheless. The The gods in their many forms remained present. Small statues in the atrium, a shrine in the kitchen, incense curling toward painted ceilings. Even in the bedroom, sacred figures lingered, symbols carved into bedposts, prayers whispered before sleep. Marriage was personal, yes, but also public. And to the Romans, public things required divine attention. They lived surrounded by the invisible. And when two lives joined, they did so under many watching eyes. Even today, echoes of those rituals remain. Rings worn on the left hand, veils, processions, the strange mix of love and formality that clings to modern weddings. But for the Romans, it was always more than a party. It was a moment of sacred transition, guided by custom, guarded by gods. Not all unions lasted. In Rome, where marriages could begin with contract and end without ceremony, love was not the only thing that bound people together, and not always strong enough to keep them so. Though wrapped in ritual and watched by the gods, a Roman marriage was, at its core, a legal agreement. And like all contracts in Roman life, it could be undone. There was no need for courts, no declarations read aloud, no priests, no state approvals, no waiting periods. A marriage could end with just a few words, spoken clearly. The Latin was simple. Tuas res tibi habeto. Hey, take your things and go. It might be said by the husband, but by the time of the late Republic, and certainly under the Empire, the wife could say it too. Divorce in ancient Rome was not rare. In fact, among the upper classes, it was common. Not scandalous, but expected. Alliances shifted, politics changed, fortunes rose and fell. A senator's daughter might marry for one arrangement, then divorce and remarry to seal another. Love had little to do with it. Reputation mattered more. Still, even when practical, divorce carried emotional weight. In the quiet corners of villas and cramped rooms above Roman shops, endings hurt. Children were divided, dowries were returned. Gossip followed, and sometimes the gods were consulted, just as they had been in the beginning. A man could dismiss his wife for reasons ranging from infidelity to infertility to simply wishing to remarry. But women, especially in sine manu marriages, had some agency too. They could initiate separation, though it came with risks, social scrutiny, financial dependence, and in some cases estrangement from their children. The state placed few restrictions on ending a marriage, but Augustus, in his effort to restore Roman virtue, introduced laws to encourage marriage and penalise adultery. The Lex Julia de Adulteriis Coercendis, passed in 18 BCE, made adultery a public crime. Husbands were required to report unfaithful wives. If they didn't, they could be punished too. These laws didn't stop affairs, they just made them more dangerous. Despite the power imbalance, some Roman women navigated these complexities with skill. Wealthy matrons, especially in elite circles, could be married multiple times, each union a stepping stone to greater power or security. Some never remarried at all. Widows, in particular, held a unique position, freer in many ways than wives. They controlled their own property, managed estates, and even took on roles of patronage in their communities. And then there were marriages that ended not with divorce but with death. Life was short, disease was common, childbirth was dangerous. A Roman might be married 3 or 4 times in a lifetime, not by choice but by fate. Tomb inscriptions often tell us more than laws do. There we find grief carved into stone. She lived with her husband for 40 years, without argument. He was the light of her life, taken too soon. In the quiet moments of history, the personal survives. Through ashes and crumbling walls, through broken rings and fading frescoes, the humanity of Roman marriage still lingers. Not every marriage was happy. Not every ending was sad. But all were woven into the same fabric, of love, of law, of life shared under the Roman sky. And so the day settles once more. In the quiet rhythm of Roman life, marriage was not always grand. Most unions did not belong to senators or poets or marble-carved tombstones. They belonged to those whose names are long since lost. Shoemakers, vendors, grain haulers, scribes, seamstresses, washerwomen. They married not to forge alliances, but to survive, to share bread, raise children, and weather time. A freedwoman might marry a freedman and run a shop. A soldier's wife might wait for years while he campaigned in distant lands. A slave might one day earn freedom and form a legal union with the one she had loved in secret. A matron might light her family's hearth with the same hand that taught her daughter how to weave. Marriage in Rome was both intimate and vast. Some were arranged, others born of affection. Some endured, others faded. Yet all were shaped by the values of their time: honour, duty, fertility, and legacy. The home was sacred, not because it was perfect, but because it was stable. It gave Rome her strength. Each home had its gods, each hearth its fire. And in these spaces, between law and affection, between silence and ceremony, Roman marriage unfolded, daily, quietly, for centuries. The rituals may seem distant now, the veils, the tunics, the joined hands and threshold crossings. But the hopes, those small, fragile wishes shared between two people starting a life together, remain remarkably the same. To be understood, to be safe, to grow old beside someone. And so we leave the Roman house, the wedding chants now long faded, the footsteps on stone growing still. We leave the laughter, the arguments, the quiet reconciliations of long nights. We leave the oil lamps dimming, the linen sheets cooling, the last whispered prayers to Juno beneath the breath. Because even in ancient Rome, as in now, the day must end. And in the stillness, sleep must come. Good night.